done in good standards, you in trouble. When the police came and took us to the courthouse in front of the judge, he called the pastor of our church. The pastor and the deacons and the trustees came over to gather us up, and he told him, he said, Reverend, these young fellows right here has outgrown our little town. You got 30 days. I think you need to find something for them to do. Come back and see me in 30 days. We left the courthouse and went to the recruiting station. The rest of it is history. We was gone in 6 weeks. That's a blessing to me because I most likely would not have lived another year being rambunctious and testing the waters and everything. So that's my farewell, hello, goodbye, and here we are. And I came to Louisville and started antagonizing the senator. He wasn't a senator then, but yes, sir.
You know, it's interesting. Every single person of color, particularly that came out of our generation, I would say obviously before and obviously after, but of that particular generation, I would say the 60s generation, kind of activist generation, has a story. It has a story of racism, of challenges, and guess what? Triumphs. Meeting those challenges and maneuvering through the roadblocks that were put in our way. But you know, but when you think about it, even as far as we have done, and we have come far.
Oh yes.
Racism is alive and well. It manifests itself today in many kinds of ways, and I think that the structure of it, the institutionalization of that process, not just these crazies that are still out there that are misguided and have some hurt in their heart where they have to hurt or set themselves above someone else. I'm talking about the white supremacists, the ones that go out and try to hurt people, intentionally try to undermine someone else's ability to succeed because of their color, because of their own deficiencies, because of the way they see themselves as being lesser than, they got to be more than. I'm talking about people who see themselves as Christian, well-meaning individuals that wouldn't hurt a fly if they knew they were going to step on one, yet they sit quietly and accept that which they know is unfair and unjust and continues to be in our society. That's where we are. And that has posed many challenges for us, and that struggle continues. But the good news as I look around our community as an example, there's tremendous talent, just like this talented young lady you got sitting next to you right now. These folks are the hope of the future, and they're bringing it. They are smart, they're energetic, they are hopeful, and they are intentional. And I think as we lend what we've learned and experienced to what they bring to the table, carrying that torch forward, I think that we will go another level of success as we continue to the future.
I think opportunities have quadrupled. I think mostly, I don't know whether it's age or what you call it, but I feel like in a lot of cases our generation have failed to create expedite the ability for the younger generations to access all of this information. For an example, the 10 years of the Vietnam crisis, the government spent little or no money on education. That 10-year gap basically crippled 10 years of who are now our seniors. So when our children came along and they needed help at home, academically or whatever, we were not prepared to bridge the gap because we had no idea looking at what they were expected to learn. So it's not that we didn't want to, It was a gap there. And bridging that gap, we still have not overcome that gap because a lot of grandparents are now saddled with trying to rear their grandchildren, and that is a painful thing. That's what I feel and look at and see.
Well, you're dealing with a very complex subject matter here, and probably we can't do it within the hour, but you point out something that's very important. We have to be intentional. We have to recognize exactly what you just said and be intentional. Like I said, the talent, the expertise is here. What I see as the deepest weakness in our community is that it's disorganized. There are lots of groups of individuals who are intentional about what they're doing, but there is a whole nother level of organization and understanding, another standard of behavior that we applaud, and other standards of behavior that we don't applaud, that we all understand. There are priorities that we should collectively agree upon. And I don't know whether it's 3 or 10 or what that number would be, but to get to the table and understand that is a crucial to us moving forward. And it goes back to your initial statement. I think understanding that, understanding our history, understanding our possibilities, and understanding our responsibilities to each other, I think is something we must strive for now, not later, not tomorrow. We don't have to look back and just talk about how bad it was or is or what we didn't do. We can do it now if we're intentional about it.
Sometimes it's hard for individuals of seasoned years to ask for help. I think I'm fortunate that I basically grew up with my sons. So at the time I was identifying for them to not make some of the same mistakes that I made. But I acknowledge the fact that some of those decisions were not good. I've always said to them, if you all don't repeat some of these decisions that I made, you're gonna be way ahead of the curve. Now, everybody can't do that. Everybody don't feel comfortable with doing that. Being branded with what is referred now as a learning disability, like a dyslexia or something, and in some cases allowing my kids to help me. That was painful. But I look at it now, it actually was a blessing because they understood and they was willing to help. So now when my grandchildren see what their parents and what we've accomplished, they are still aware of the fact that was a struggle. It wasn't all bias and racism. It was DNA. It was inherited. But we can still overcome it if we give credit to talent and ability regardless what age it is. And that is the reason that I asked this young lady to sit in here with us today, because we want to invest in her and help her on her journey. And being a parent, yes, that's a shock because she looked like she could be in the 8th grade or middle school or something. And when they said it to me, I said, what? Okay. But to have her in the room and bring energy, which is what she said. We asked what you want to do. She said, I want to bring energy. And I said, oh my goodness, you're in a heck of a place here because you might be drained down to zero by the time you go out this door. But if you would kind of give us a little snippet of what you feel and what you see as you're coming through the challenges you face.
I just want to say, like, my generation, like you all have said, we are the future. I mean, we can't give up. I know there's a lot of things going on, especially in certain places and to certain people. I just feel like if we can all come together and push through, we'll get there. We can overcome a lot of things. There's a lot of things that's coming at us, and it's not going to stop, but we'll push through and we'll get through.
Don't you love it?
Isn't that something?
Yeah. See, that's that hope determination, turning your eyes to the future. There's no such thing as quit. You know, all that all into one. I hear that, what she's saying there. And that's why I look at all the things around me. I see some people that are sad, or they feel like, oh man, look where we are now, because we're not where they expected us to be. But then I see these young people. Boy, I get charged up all over again myself, because they're going to carry it. I'm confident in that.
As we look around, and I always say, I think Louisville, Jefferson County, and our community may be one of the most complacent communities around. I mean, we're not complacent in the barbershop and beauty shop and those places, but when it comes to showing up and taking that extra step and having our voice heard where it can really make a difference, we don't do that. So I'm sure from the legislative standpoint, you have some things that you would like to ask this community to support.
Well, actually, it's broader than the legislative piece.
Okay.
If I may.
Sure.
First of all, we're right in this MLK period here, and I think it's important for us to take that pause. But really, what it raises up for me is a period for reflection and regeneration. Some people say, well, it's a day to do something. Well, that's good. But for me, it's a period of reflection and regeneration, and rededication to action throughout the year, to begin to come together and to address issues together, as the young lady has indicated. But let me tell you, that is harder. Let me put it this way: that's easier said than done, because you can't turn that over to someone else. That's something you have to do. And I think, going back, I think that's what the MLK message piece is about. What do you do? Right now, we're in legislative session, and there are issues and policies that are affecting everyone's life in our community, actually across the state of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But what I find is that the engagement level between here and there is not what is really needed to generate change in a greater proportion. And I say that because I think many people think that they elect someone like me or Reggie Meeks or other people who I think do really fine work. But to have that connection, engagement for the community in real time, when we're actually there setting policy, I cannot tell you how important that is. So we're constantly trying to reach out and connect and get that to happen. Now, if I may.
Sure. Yes, sir.
I was very encouraged by the election of Governor Beshear. And I was encouraged because I recognized that if we had lost that particular election, folks that deal with the issues I deal with and feel the way I feel, I would dare say the vast majority of people in our communities would have been out the door for the next 20 years. And I'm not exaggerating, because in our legislature, we had this may sound partisan, and it is, because we have a two-party system. We had a Republican governor, a Republican-controlled House, a Republican-controlled Senate. Think about that for a moment. What that means is that, in my estimation, that those issues that affect us are not going to be heard. They're not going to be at the front of the agenda, because those who are in control set that agenda. So you can come back home, you can let me and anybody else. But if someone else is controlling that agenda, and you have no control over that, because other people are electing these people as well, then it makes it difficult. But when you engage that process, you'd be surprised how people who you would take for granted would be against the position that you're advocating. Some part of their humanity, some part of their rationalizing things gets involved in that policy-making process, because they've been engaged by people other than the person sitting across from them, who they may see as an adversary.